From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Friday, September the 23rd, 2016. A Palestinian teenager tried to attack Israeli soldiers guarding a bus stop in the West Bank today. The incident occurred outside the Jewish settlement of Kiryat Arba, where, according to Ynet, the 14-year-old tried to sneak up on the Israeli security forces stationed at the Elias Junction with a knife. The teen was shot before he was able to stab anyone. He received medical attention at the scene and was evacuated to Shaarei Tzedek Medical Center in Jerusalem for further treatment, where he was said to be in serious condition. Later today, riots broke out along the border fence with Gaza. IDF forces used riot dispersal methods to subdue the Palestinian protesters there. According to the IDF, in one of the riots, 3 instigators breached the buffer zone, an area surrounding the border where Palestinians are not allowed to enter. And in order to prevent their further advance, the forces shot towards the rioters. Palestinian media reports that 3 Palestinians were in fact wounded in that incident. Jewish organizations welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's address yesterday to the United Nations General Assembly and criticized the address of Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. In his address, Netanyahu restated his commitment to peace and to direct talks between Israel and the Palestinians.
President Abbas, instead of railing against Israel at the United Nations in New York, I invite you to speak to the Israeli people at the Knesset in Jerusalem. And I would gladly come to speak to the Palestinian parliament in Ramallah. The road to peace runs through Jerusalem and Ramallah, not through New York.
Abbas, in his remarks, urged the international community to pressure Israel. He also demanded an apology from the British for the Balfour Declaration of 1917, supporting the idea of a Jewish homeland. CEO of the American Jewish Committee, David Harris, said today UN member states had the opportunity to see that Israel seeks peace, while tragically, 68 years after Israel's rebirth, the Palestinian leadership still cannot reconcile itself to the very existence of the State of Israel. National Chair of the Anti-Defamation League, Marvin Nathan, and CEO Jonathan Greenblatt said Abbas's suggestion about the Balfour Declaration raises serious questions about his willingness to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. The ADL leader said Abbas should focus on ending incitement at home and acknowledge that the only viable route to alleviating the conflict is through compromises at the negotiating table with Israel. A delegation of some 100 Jewish leaders from across the globe will gather next week to mark the 75th anniversary of the massacre at Babi Yar. The World Jewish Congress delegation will meet in Kiev, Ukraine next week to remember the more than 33,000 Jews slaughtered by the Nazis at the Babi Yar ravine on September the 29th and 30th of 1941. The WJC is coordinating with the Ukrainian government, the Canada-based NGO Ukrainian Jewish Encounter, and the Jewish community of Ukraine to organize a series of events for the anniversary. And WJC President Ronald Lauder will speak at the ceremony next week, as will Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko and Israel's President Reuven Rivlin. The American Jewish Committee has a new post in Europe. The Shapiro-Silverberg AJC Central Europe office is the Global Advocacies Organization's 5th post in Europe. It is based in Warsaw and will focus on Poland as well as on the Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, and Slovakia. Earlier this month, the AJC announced the appointment of Ambassador Elena Popdarova as director of the new central office. And taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Friday, September the 23rd. Live Shabbat services are coming up at 6 o'clock from New York City's Central Synagogue, followed at 7:30 with highlights of the 24th Annual Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow, Poland. At 8 o'clock, author Malcolm Gladwell talks about his latest book with Jacob Weisberg at the 92nd Street Y. At 9, it's episode 1 of the story of the Jewish people in the 20th century on Faith and Fate, Dawn of the Century. And at 10, former NBC journalist and host of Meet the Press, David Gregory, describes his spiritual journey, which he writes about in his book, How's Your Faith? To the Jewish Federation of North America's General Assembly, 2015. And coming up right after this newscast tonight, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin shares his thoughts on this week's Torah portion. And that's the JBS News Update for Friday, September the 23rd, 2016. I'm Teisha Bader. Shabbat Shalom.